I noticed the change in my wife long before I knew its cause. Little things. A new password on her phone, late nights that she waved off as girls' time, and a distracted glaze in her eyes even when we sat together. After 15 years of marriage, I knew Rebecca's habits like my own. So when she invited me to dinner at La Trattoria, her favorite Italian spot, I sensed an unusual gravity in her voice. She was dressed to kill that night, in a slinky black dress I hadn't seen in ages. Compliments caught in my throat. Something felt off. Through appetizers and wine, Rebecca fiddled with her napkin, avoiding my gaze. My gut churned. I braced for bad news. Maybe an illness or some financial problem she hid. Nothing could prepare me for what she finally confessed. In a quiet, trembling voice, Rebecca announced she was having an affair. She wanted a divorce. I stared at her across the candlelight, my fork frozen mid-air. The restaurant's warm buzz seemed to hush all at once. My heart thundered as she continued in a rush. "I didn't mean for you to find out like this. His name is Brandon. I'm sorry, Daniel." Each word hit like a hammer. I realized my hand was crushing the linen napkin in my fist. Betrayal, rage, disbelief. A cyclone of emotions ripped through me. But I refused to give her the satisfaction of an outburst. I've always prided myself on my self-control. A strategic mind is my greatest asset, both in business and life. In that soul-shattering moment, some detached part of me took command. I released the napkin, straightened my posture, and looked her dead in the eye. "So," I said slowly, voice low but steady, "you found someone else?" Rebecca nodded, tears brimming. My throat constricted, but I forced myself to speak calmly. "I can't change the way you feel. Your feelings are your own," I said, each word measured. "If you don't love me anymore, I won't beg or fight. I only fight for things I want. And if you truly believe you'll be happier with him, then who am I to stand in your way?" Rebecca's eyes widened, as if my composure was more shocking than if I'd flipped the table. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. In the stunned silence, I felt my heart breaking, piece by piece, even as my face remained a mask. I stood up carefully, reaching for my wallet. With deliberate calm, I placed a stack of bills on the table to cover our half-eaten dinner. "Have a good life, Rebecca," I said, my voice cold. I hope he was worth it. The clink of silverware and murmur of nearby diners returned as I stepped away from the table. I could feel every pair of eyes in the restaurant on us. On me, the quietly devastated husband, and on her, the guilty wife. My legs felt wooden, but I walked tall. Rebecca whispered something, a quavering, "Dan, wait." But I didn't stop. I didn't turn back. As I exited the restaurant into the cool night air, a tremor went through me. I realized I had been holding my breath. My chest burned with repressed anguish and anger. I marched to my car, gripped by a single thought. It's over. The life I knew, the woman I loved and trusted, it was all over. But I'd be damned if I let my world crumble in front of her or a crowd of strangers. I'd given Rebecca the dignity of a quiet exit. Now I intended to reclaim my own dignity, and much more. I sat behind the wheel for a long moment, hands shaking on the steering wheel. In the silence of the car, reality came crashing in. She cheated. She planned this. The dinner was just a stage for her announcement. A hot bolt of fury shot through me, and I pounded the steering wheel once, hard. But almost instantly, I stopped myself. I could not afford to fall apart. Not yet. If my marriage was ending tonight, I needed to act decisively to protect myself. A strange, survivalist clarity settled in. "All right, Dan," I whispered to myself, staring out at the neon-lit parking lot. "Think." Rebecca was still inside, likely crying into her creme brulee or calling him for comfort. The thought twisted in my gut, but it hardened my resolve. This betrayal would not destroy me. If she wanted to be rid of me so badly, I would oblige, and make sure she paid dearly for that freedom. With a long, unsteady breath, I started the engine. It was time to get to work. I drove past our house that night without pulling into the driveway. The place I'd called home for years now felt tainted. Was Brandon there already, lurking in my home or waiting for her? The thought made me grip the wheel until my knuckles went white. I decided I couldn't face our marital bed or its memories tonight. Instead, I checked into a downtown hotel. Alone in room 803, I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of what happened. The door had barely closed when a ragged sob burst from my throat. I sank onto the edge of the plain queen bed, head in my hands. 15 years of marriage, gone in one conversation. Rebecca's smiling face flooded my memory. Our wedding day, vacations, quiet Sunday mornings making coffee. All those moments felt like they belonged to someone else's life now. I wondered numbly how long she'd been seeing him, how many lies it took to get to this point. My stomach churned thinking of them together. I don't know how long I sat in that stupor of misery. At some point, exhaustion and logic kicked in. Crying on a hotel bed wouldn't secure my future or undo what she'd done. I needed to pull myself together and make a plan. Through the haze of pain, I recalled a mantra from my college days as a music student. EGBDF, every good boy does fine. My piano teacher taught me that mnemonic for the lines of the treble clef, but it became a personal motto over the years. Be the good guy, do the right thing, and you'll be fine. Well, I had been the good, devoted husband, and look where it got me. Still, the phrase steadied me now. I repeated it in my mind like a breathing exercise until my heartbeat slowed and my vision cleared. I would be fine. I just had to act. I grabbed the hotel notepad and began scribbling a to-do list with a fury that belied my trembling hand. I listed everything that needed handling before the sun rose. Secure finances. Move half of our joint savings into a separate account under my name only. Freeze our line of credit and any joint credit cards before she or her lover could drain them. Find a lawyer. Call Gloria Atkins, the sharpest divorce attorney in town, first thing in the morning. If Gloria can't take it, get a referral to someone who can. Living arrangements. I can't live in that house with her now. Either I leave or she does. I already left tonight, but I need a longer-term plan. Look into short-term apartment or corporate housing leases tomorrow. Inform family. Rebecca and I were supposed to attend her parents' 40th anniversary party this Saturday. I have to let her father, Frank, know I won't be there, and why if possible without blowing things up. They deserve to hear it from me before rumors start. Protect assets, inventory all accounts, investments, and valuables. Change online banking passwords. She hasn't worked in years. Every dollar in our life I earned. I won't let her and this guy walk away with my hard-earned money easily. Gather evidence. Check phone records, bank statements, anything that could prove adultery. Pennsylvania was a no-fault divorce state, I recalled, but proof of infidelity could still be leverage in negotiations. I read over the bullet points. My roadmap out of hell. The list gave me a cold comfort. Each item a problem I could actually solve, unlike my broken heart. Action would keep me sane. I refused to be the cliché, sobbing, cuckolded husband who gets taken to the cleaners. If Rebecca wanted ruthless independence, I would give it to her, on my terms. That night, I barely slept. I paced the small hotel room and made phone calls at dawn. By 7 a.m., I had shifted just over $45,000 out of our joint savings into an account solely in my name. That was half of what we'd saved. I left the rest for her so it wouldn't look like theft, just a fair split for now. I also quietly canceled the 2 credit cards where I was the primary holder. Rebecca had a secondary card on those accounts. She'd discover soon enough that they no longer worked. Good. I smirked darkly at the thought of her attempting to treat Loverboy to something on my dime and getting declined. At 8 a.m., I left a message with Gloria Atkins's office, requesting an urgent appointment. Gloria was known in our city as a fearsome advocate, the lawyer wives hire when they're out for blood. She also had a reputation for representing the occasional wronged husband, and I hoped my case would pique her interest. I suspected she'd have a waiting list, but money talks. I was prepared to empty my wallet to have a legal shark on my side. Next came the hardest call so far, Frank and Eileen, my in-laws. They had treated me like a son for years. Frank and I golfed together every month. Eileen often joked I was the only one who appreciated her secret cookie ingredient, a touch of cardamom. My stomach knotted dialing their number. "How do you tell parents their daughter detonated her marriage?" Frank answered on the second ring, jovial as ever. "Danny, how's my favorite son-in-law?" My throat tightened. Somehow I kept my voice from cracking as I exchanged a few pleasantries. Then I carefully explained that I wouldn't be attending their anniversary barbecue this weekend. "I'm so sorry, Frank," I said quietly. "Something's come up at work and I don't want to spoil your celebration." There was a pause on the line. Frank isn't a fool. He sensed something in my tone. "Dan, everything all right between you and Becca? She mentioned you had a special dinner last night. She was upset when she called us later." His voice was laced with concern. Upset, was she? That felt like a slap. She calls her parents crying, painting me as the bad guy maybe. I swallowed my bitterness. "Not exactly all right, no," I admitted. "But please enjoy your party. You two have 40 wonderful years to celebrate. I wouldn't dream of casting a shadow over it." My voice trembled, despite my resolve. "I'll explain everything next week, I promise." Frank exhaled heavily. "Son, you're scaring me. Is she okay? Are you okay?" "No, but I will be," I replied, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Give my love to Eileen. We'll talk soon. I can't do this over the phone, and I don't want drama on your big day." Frank was quiet for a long moment. Finally, in a gruff voice, he said, "All right, Dan, I won't press now, but you take care of yourself, and whatever it is, you two can work it out. 40 years, ups and downs happen. Eileen and I couldn't bear his kindness." "I have to go, Frank. I'll be in touch." I hung up before my composure shattered. I knew Rebecca would have to face them soon enough, and I doubted they'd condone what she'd done. But that was her problem. My priority was me now. By 9 a.m., I was running on black coffee and adrenaline. I headed to my office to tie up a few things and inform my assistant Janice that I'd be taking some personal leave. At the engineering firm where I worked, Janice had been my right hand for a decade. She greeted me with her usual bright smile that faltered as soon as she saw my face. I must have looked as wrecked as I felt. "Good morning, Mr. Harris." "Dan, are you all right?" she asked softly as I closed the door behind me. I attempted a reassuring nod. "I will be. Listen, Janice, I have some difficult news. Rebecca and we're divorcing." The word tasted bitter and strange in my mouth. Janice's eyes widened with immediate fury. That woman! How could she? She bit off her words, embarrassed by her outburst. I'm sorry, it's not my place. But I never trusted how chummy she'd gotten with those new friends of hers. That caught me off guard. Did you know something was going on? I asked, surprised. Janice pursed her lips. Not exactly, but I saw Rebecca lunching with a younger man about a month ago, when I was out with my sister. They looked cozy. I wasn't sure if I should say anything. She shook her head. I should have. You're a good man, Dan. You don't deserve this. I managed a tight smile. Thank you, Janice. What's done is done. Now I have to focus on the business side of this split. I'm going to be out of the office a lot dealing with lawyers and such. I need you to screen any calls or visits from Rebecca. I'm not ready to talk to her. Janice straightened her blazer. All business. Of course. If she calls, I'll tell her you're unavailable. And if she shows up, security will handle it. Don't you worry. Her fierce loyalty bolstered me more than she could know. I spent the next hour delegating my current projects to colleagues and setting an out-of-office message. As I wrapped up, my phone buzzed with a text from Gloria Atkins's office. Mr. Harris, Gloria can see you at 11:30 a.m. today. Address attached. Relief washed through me. Help was on the way, and not a moment too soon. Before leaving, I took one more decisive step in my plan. I emailed a realtor friend about valuing our house for immediate sale. Our house. The home where we built dreams. Now just another asset to be divided. The thought stung, but I steeled myself. The faster I turned that house into liquid equity, the faster I could ensure Rebecca and her boy toy wouldn't nest there at my expense. I glanced at my watch. Time to go meet Gloria. I grabbed my files, years of financial statements, bank records, property deeds neatly organized. I've always been meticulous, and headed out. Passing Janice's desk, I murmured, "Thanks for everything. I'll check in later." She gave my hand a squeeze and a nod of encouragement. As I left the office, a familiar figure in the parking lot caught my eye. Rebecca's car. My heart lurched. She was here? Sure enough, I saw her slim form step out of the driver's side. Even from a distance, I could tell she was anxious, scanning the building entrance. Likely she'd come to explain, or maybe to cry and plead. Not a chance, I thought. I was nowhere near ready to face her manipulations. Before she could spot me, I slipped behind a delivery van and doubled back around the side of the building. Once in my car, I kept my head down. Through the rearview mirror, I watched Rebecca approaching the glass doors of my office building, only to be stopped by the security guard. Good old Janice had already called down, it seemed. Rebecca looked frustrated, talking quickly to the guard, but he shook his head and stood firm. Part of me wanted to laugh. I'd never seen her barred from anywhere. She'd always been welcomed with smiles because she was Mrs. Harris. Not anymore. I didn't stick around to see if she left. My chest was too tight, seeing her even from afar. I quietly eased my car out of the lot, making sure to exit via the back. As I drove off to meet my lawyer, I allowed myself a grim smile. Rebecca was going to learn. I intended to be the one writing the final chapter of our story. Gloria Atkins's office was not what I expected. Instead of a downtown high-rise, her address led to a modest one-story building in a strip mall on the west side of town. Sandwiched between a day clinic and a lingerie outlet, a small sign read, "Atkins Family Law." I took a deep breath and stepped inside, clutching my folders like a shield. "Mr. Harris?" the receptionist asked. I nodded. "Gloria will see you now." Gloria Atkins greeted me at her door with a firm handshake. She was a striking woman in her 50s, tall and solidly built, with steely gray hair swept into a twist. Her eyes, a piercing blue behind stylish glasses, assessed me sharply. "Come in, let's talk," she said briskly. I sat in the leather chair across from her desk, my heart thumping. Gloria wasted no time. "Tell me what happened, Mr. Harris. I usually represent wives, but your message intrigued me. Start at the beginning and don't leave anything out. Time is money." I appreciated her directness. In a steady voice that only cracked once or twice, I recounted the past 24 hours. The dinner, the affair reveal, my actions since. Gloria listened without interruption, her expression unreadable, until I mentioned that I left our home voluntarily. She grimaced. "You moved out? Checked into a hotel?" she clarified. "Yes. I didn't want a war zone at home, and I couldn't stand to be there with her," I admitted. Gloria clicked her tongue. "I get it emotionally, but legally that was a misstep. By leaving, you may have given her temporary possession of the house. But don't panic. We can work with it." She made a note on her pad. "Is the house solely in your name?" "It is. I bought it before we married, but we refinanced once in both names," I explained. "Actually, I need to clarify that with you." She held up a hand. "We'll get to the assets in a minute. First, I need to know, any kids?" I shook my head. "No children." "All right. Have you ever cheated on her? Any abuse, gambling, hidden addictions that could come up?" "No, none of that," I said firmly. My stomach twisted. It felt surreal to be the one answering these questions, when she was the betrayer. Gloria peered at me over her glasses. "So she just got bored being a housewife and picked up a boy toy, huh?" My jaw clenched. "That's one way to put it." She tapped her pen, thinking. "Mr. Harris, Dan, I'll be frank. I don't usually take on male clients. Too often it's the husband who's the bastard in these scenarios. But from everything you've said, you've been the dutiful husband, and she's tossed you aside for a fling. Is that right?" I swallowed hard. "Right. And you're prepared to do what it takes to protect yourself and what you've earned." Her eyes glittered with challenge. "Divorce isn't pretty. I play hardball. Many men can't handle that when the heat's on." I met her gaze, anger lending steel to my spine. "I can handle it. I'm ready to be ruthless." A thin smile curved her lips. "Good." She leaned back. "Then here's how we'll proceed. First, we file for divorce immediately, on grounds of adultery." I raised my eyebrows. "This state is no fault, though. Does adultery help?" "It can, especially in property division and alimony considerations, if we push for a fault-based approach," Gloria said, rifling through a binder on her desk. "At the very least, it's leverage. She won't want her affair dragged out in court or in public record if we can avoid it. We use that to get favorable terms in a settlement." She ticked points off on her fingers. "Second, we petition for exclusive use of the marital home during proceedings, since it's in your name and you have a right to reside there. You left, but legally we can argue you only did so to avoid conflict. We need to either get you back in that house or get it sold and assets frozen so she can't squat indefinitely." "I already contacted a realtor about selling," I interjected, "and I've moved money." Gloria held up a hand, smiling more genuinely this time. "Yes, I was pleasantly surprised by your initiative this morning. My assistant told me you mentioned moving half the savings. Smart, though you left some, which shows good faith. Judges like reasonable behavior." Her approval was oddly empowering. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had a capable ally. "Next, we make sure your income doesn't become her safety net," Gloria continued. Do you have a high salary? I cleared my throat. Comfortable enough. I'm an engineering manager at my firm. About $150K a year. She nodded. And she hasn't worked in how long? About 7 years. She left her marketing job to focus on some personal projects, none of which ever turned into a career, I said, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. For years, I'd supported her painting classes, yoga retreats, and various hobbies, happy that my income gave her freedom. Now it all felt like a sucker's investment. So she's financially dependent on you. Typically, that'd mean alimony, potentially a large share of assets to her. Gloria's eyes flashed. But adulterers don't get a trophy for their infidelity, not on my watch. You said you could be ruthless, Dan. How do you feel about taking a leave of absence from work? I blinked. A leave? Why? If you're not earning or if your earnings temporarily dip, it weakens any alimony claim, she explained. Judges can't force you to pay what you don't have coming in. You have substantial savings and investments to live on, correct? I considered. I had my 401k, equity investments, the expected house sale proceeds. I could manage without salary for a while, yes. I was already thinking of taking some time off to clear my head. Gloria looked almost gleeful. Perfect. We'll paint it as you being so emotionally devastated that you're unable to work at full capacity, maybe even seeking therapy for the trauma. If you temporarily reduce your income, any support orders would likewise be minimal, and once the divorce is finalized, you can resume working or start that side business you mentioned wanting to try. I nodded slowly, impressed by the strategy. It was a cold maneuver, sure, but why should I bankroll Rebecca's new life with him? No, she chose to tear her world apart. Let her figure out finances for once. For the next hour, we went over every asset in detail. I handed over bank statements, retirement account info, my property deed, car titles. Gloria's efficiency was stunning. She identified which assets were unquestionably mine, like my car, bought with my pre-marriage savings, which were marital, house equity, joint accounts, and how we could tilt the split in my favor. We'll propose a 60/40th division of marital assets in your favor, she declared, penciling figures on a legal pad. Considering her misconduct, that's more than fair. We'll also stipulate you keep your full retirement fund and any stock options. She gets a portion of liquid assets and maybe a small cash settlement from the house sale, but nothing crippling to you. I felt a sting of concern. And if she fights back? If she refuses and wants, I don't know, alimony for years or more than 50%? Gloria's smile was icy. If she wants to fight, we'll let her know we're ready to air all the dirty laundry. Adultery, possible dissipation of assets if she spent marital funds on her lover, even subpoenaing the lover's finances, if relevant. It rarely comes to that. My bet, once served with our demands, she'll capitulate to avoid scandal. I took a deep breath. This was a lot to digest, but each calculated move felt justified. I had been faithful, supportive, loving. Now I was prepared to be mercilessly practical. All right, let's do it, I agreed. Good man. Gloria slid a draft petition in front of me for review. It listed irreconcilable differences with a note on infidelity and sought disproportionate asset division in my favor due to marital misconduct. It also requested an order for the sale of the house and a freeze on all joint accounts until distribution. As I initialed page after page, I felt a grim satisfaction. Once you sign, I'll have a process server hand these to your wife by tomorrow, Gloria said. She'll be officially served with divorce papers. Do you know if she's staying at the house right now? I thought of last night. She was home when I left dinner. As far as I know, she's at the house, probably with him. I practically spat the last word. Gloria arched an eyebrow. He's staying there already? I shrugged. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's there often. He's younger, late 20s, and I think he rents a place with roommates. The allure of a free suburban home might be too good for him to pass up. She pursed her lips in distaste. If he's taken up residence in your home, that strengthens our case to force a sale and division ASAP. The judge will see that as highly improper during a separation. I imagined Brandon lounging on my couch, maybe even sleeping in my bed beside Rebecca. The thought made me physically ill. Let's just say I'm very motivated to get the house sold, I said tightly. Gloria nodded. Understood. One more thing. Any chance this other man has money or assets? We can't sue him directly in this state for alienation of affection or anything. But if he's a leech, it will work in your favor. Judges sympathize when the cheating spouse's paramour is sponging off marital resources. I think he's broke, I said. He might even be unemployed. Rebecca mentioned something about him starting a new job soon once, which to me sounded like wishful thinking. I doubt he's contributing anything beyond youth. My voice dripped with contempt. Disgusting, Gloria muttered. She stood, signaling our meeting's end. All right, Dan. My team will file this immediately. Over the next few days, sit tight. Don't respond to any communication from Rebecca or her lover. If she contacts you, refer her to me. Understood? Understood, I agreed, standing as well. I felt simultaneously exhausted and energized. So much had happened so fast. But at least now I had a plan of attack rather than just pain. Gloria reached out and actually patted my shoulder, an unexpected gesture of warmth. Look, I know this is hell emotionally, but you're doing the right thing coming out strong. We'll protect what's yours. In a year's time, you'll thank yourself for standing up now. I mustered a small, genuine smile. Thank you, Gloria. Really. On my way out, she added. And Dan? Be prepared for the shock and anger from your wife when she realizes Mr. Nice Guy isn't rolling over. She may try to play victim or plead. Don't fall for it. Her words echoed in my mind as I got in my car. I knew Rebecca well. She hated looking like the villain. When those papers hit her hands, the fallout would begin. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel and steeled myself. This was war. One she started, and one I intended to finish mercilessly. By Friday, 2 days later, the wheels were fully in motion. Rebecca was officially served on Thursday morning. I hadn't been there to witness it, but I imagined her shock and fury as a legal courier handed her the divorce petition and property sale notice. Part of me wished I had seen it. According to Gloria, Rebecca's lawyer, she'd hastily hired someone, called almost immediately to protest the house sale and our aggressive terms. That was fast. Apparently nothing like a divorce summons to send a cheating spouse scrambling. Gloria coolly informed them that given the circumstances, our terms were generous, and their client would be wise to sign. The ball was in Rebecca's court to either fight or fold. For my part, I kept a low profile. I'd taken an immediate leave of absence from work using accumulated vacation and personal days. My boss, surprised but understanding, agreed to a few weeks off. I hinted at health issues without delving into the personal drama. Meanwhile, I moved into a furnished month-to-month apartment across town. It wasn't homey, but it was mercifully free of memories. On Friday evening, I found myself alone in that sterile apartment, flipping channels on the TV without really watching. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Opening it, I saw a photo that made me sit up. It was my wife and her lover. The image showed Rebecca in our backyard, hosting what looked like a small gathering. Fairy lights were strung up on our patio, the same lights I'd hung for her last birthday. Brandon, the bastard, was visible in the foreground, beer in hand, laughing. There were a few other people around, faces I didn't recognize. The timestamp showed it was last night. A second text came through. Heard about the divorce. This was them last night. Disgusting. Jamie. Jamie was our next-door neighbor and a close friend of mine. My jaw tightened as I absorbed the picture. Less than 48 hours after nuking our marriage, Rebecca was throwing a party at my house with him. The audacity was staggering, but it also fueled my resolve. She was flaunting her new life as if I were already erased. I dialed Jamie immediately. He picked up on the first ring. "Dan, I'm sorry to send that, but I thought you should know what they're doing," he said, anger evident in his voice. I nearly hopped the fence to knock that punk out when I saw him there. I closed my eyes, willing myself to stay calm. "Thanks, Jamie. It's better I know. I appreciate you looking out for me." "They've been loud, too," Jamie went on. "Music, drinking, maybe a half-dozen people. It's like he's moved right in and turned your place into a frat house. I figured you'd want to call the cops or something, but I know you have bigger plans in play." I grimaced. "Yeah, the legal side is underway. Honestly, knowing they're already celebrating makes it easier not to feel guilty about coming after the house. It just reaffirms everything." Jamie lowered his voice. "Oh, and get this. Earlier tonight I overheard your father-in-law, Frank, shouting at them in the front yard." That jolted me. Frank was there? He went to the house? Oh yes, around 6 p.m. I could hear some of it from my porch. He was yelling at Rebecca. Something about, "How could you do this to Dan?" and "raising you better than this." He called the boyfriend a freeloader, I believe. It was one hell of a scene. Despite the dismal situation, I felt a warm glimmer of vindication knowing Frank had confronted them. He must have spoken with Rebecca after I called him and got the ugly truth. "How did that end?" I asked. "They kicked Frank off the property. Actually, the boyfriend mouthed off, said something like, 'This is our house now, old man. You're trespassing.'" Jamie sounded outraged. "That kid has no shame." I nearly crushed my phone in my hand. Brandon dared to claim my house, to my father-in-law's face, and call him old man? My blood boiled. Frank is a sturdy guy, Vietnam vet, and doesn't take crap from anyone. I could imagine how that standoff went. "I'm guessing it didn't get physical?" I asked, half wishing it had. "No, Frank left after telling Rebecca she's not welcome at their home until she wises up." He looked heartbroken, Dan. "I figured you should know. They're on your side if that wasn't obvious." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "It's good to know. I'm sorry they're dragged into this mess." Jamie hesitated, then offered, "If you need anything, documents picked up, a witness to their antics, anything at all, I'm here." "Thank you," I said earnestly. "I might take you up on that. This thing isn't over yet." After hanging up, I paced my apartment. The image of that party and Brandon's smug face danced in my mind. I couldn't let them continue to live it up on my dime. 30 days, that's how long, per the papers, Rebecca had to vacate once the house sale process began. Gloria had assured me that even if she contested, the court would likely enforce a sale given the circumstances. But 30 days felt an eternity as I pictured them trashing the place. However, the fact that her father had shown up and yelled was interesting. It meant the fallout was extending beyond just us. Rebecca's perfect image was cracking in her own family. Her mother, Eileen, even called me that night, after hearing from Frank. When I answered Eileen's call, she sounded in tears. "Oh, Daniel, dear, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry," she wept. "We love you like a son. I can't believe what our daughter has done." My throat tightened. "Thank you, Eileen. I'm still trying to believe it myself." She sniffled. "Frank was so furious after he left your house. He said that boy was there and they were hosting friends like nothing happened. I feel I've failed as a mother to raise her with decency." I found myself comforting her. "You and Frank raised her well. She made these choices on her own. Sometimes people change or lose their way. I don't blame you." Eileen lowered her voice. "If there's anything we can do to help you, we will. Frank even said if you need him to testify or anything, he'd gladly tell a judge what he saw." "I appreciate that. My attorney might indeed want statements from witnesses, and I'm truly grateful for your support. I know it must be hard being torn between family, but—" She cut me off. "Torn? No. She's our blood, but your family too. And what she's doing, it's wrong. We won't condone it." There was steel under her sadness. "She came by earlier today, before that little party, and tried to justify herself to us. Talked about feeling unfulfilled, and that you two grew apart. I told her that was no excuse to do what she did." "How did she react?" I asked quietly, picturing the scene. "Angry, defensive," Eileen said with a sigh. "She said we're taking your side and not understanding her needs. Then she stormed off. That's when Frank decided to pay a visit and knocked some sense into her. Though I guess that didn't go well either." I rubbed my tired eyes. Rebecca spinning the narrative that we grew apart and she was unfulfilled was predictable, I suppose. Cheaters often rewrite marital history to justify their actions. It still hurt like hell to hear. But hearing Eileen's unwavering support strengthened my resolve all the more. I wasn't crazy. Rebecca's actions were objectively cruel and foolish. After I hung up with Eileen, I sat in the dark for a while, thinking about how completely Rebecca's world was shifting. She had her lover, yes, but seemingly little else. Her parents were furious. Most of our mutual friends had learned the broad strokes by now. News travels fast. And a few had sent me supportive messages, implying they knew she'd done something awful. She was being painted as the bad guy, and rightly so. I took no joy in others scorning her, but it was the natural consequence of her betrayal. Social humiliation was part of the price she'd pay. By the following week, my divorce proceedings accelerated. Rebecca, through her attorney, initially fought back on the house sale and asked for more money. But Gloria countered by threatening to subpoena Brandon's financial records and depose him about their affair, putting all the dirty details on record. Apparently, that shut them up quickly. Within days, Rebecca's side agreed in principle to most of our terms. 60/40ths asset split. House to be sold. Minimal spousal support. Just a token 6-month alimony at a very modest amount. Perhaps Rebecca realized that if this went before a judge, it would only further destroy her reputation, and maybe Brandon didn't relish a courtroom appearance either. The legal victory came faster than I expected. By the end of the month, we had a signed settlement agreement. The court would still need to process it and issue the final decree after the state's mandatory waiting period. But essentially, the deal was done. I was getting the lion's share of what I wanted. The house was already listed for sale, and a cash buyer, an investor, made an offer within a week. All that remained was for Rebecca to move out. She had 30 days per our agreement, But the buyer wanted to close quickly, so pressure was on her to find other accommodations. Not my problem. She'd have to lean on Brandon or actually spend some of that 40% share she got. Throughout those turbulent weeks, I maintained no contact with Rebecca. Every communication went through lawyers. I ignored the few texts and voicemails she sent early on. We need to talk, or can we at least be civil about this? Civil. She didn't know the meaning of the word when she ambushed me with divorce news at dinner and paraded her lover around. I owed her nothing. Meanwhile, I busied myself with a project that had long been my dream. With time off work and a hefty dose of restless energy, I turned my attention to a small engineering design I had ideated months ago. A compact sensor module for industrial machines. Originally, I never had time to prototype it due to marital obligations and routine. Now, tinkering in the rented apartment's second bedroom, which I'd converted into a makeshift workshop, I poured my heart into developing it. It became my therapy. Each success with code or soldering lifted my spirits. By the time our divorce papers were ready to sign, I even had a working prototype. My friend at work, who knew some investors, got wind of it and set up a meeting. In a stroke of luck or fate, my design attracted interest as a startup venture. Suddenly, instead of returning to my old job, I found myself forming a small company with seed funding. It was both exciting and daunting, but it reaffirmed that life indeed goes on and can get better. I quietly thanked Rebecca in a dark way. Her treachery inadvertently freed me to pursue this opportunity. The best revenge is living well, as the saying goes, and I intended to live exceptionally well. One crisp morning, about 2 months after that fateful dinner, I pulled into the driveway of what used to be my house. The moving truck in front and the flurry of activity indicated Rebecca was finally getting out. The closing on the sale was a few days away, and I had come by to pick up a few remaining personal items, tools from my garage workshop mostly, per schedule. I hadn't seen Rebecca face to face since the restaurant night, and I hoped to grab my things and go before she realized I was there. As I walked up, I saw Brandon hauling a box to his car. He noticed me and gave a short nod, looking uncertain. The cockiness from the party photo was gone. In fact, he looked downright miserable with dark circles under his eyes. Perhaps living with a now broke, stressed woman under constant familial shame hadn't been the party he envisioned. Without a word, he went back inside. I found my boxes of tools in the garage exactly where I'd asked Rebecca, through Gloria, to leave them. I began loading them into my trunk, heart pounding simply from being on this property again. Memories threatened to flood me. Christmas mornings, backyard barbecues, but I focused on the task. Just as I lifted the last toolbox, I heard the front door slam. I turned to see Rebecca standing on the porch, arms wrapped around herself. She wore a plain t-shirt and jeans, hair in a messy ponytail. She looked smaller than I remembered, diminished. When our eyes met, she gave a hesitant wave. "Dan, can we talk?" she called softly. Every instinct told me to walk away, but something in her voice, defeated, fragile, made me pause. Perhaps this would be my final moment of closure. I shut the trunk and faced her across the driveway. "I'm listening," I said, keeping distance. She walked a few steps closer, then stopped at the edge of the porch, as if not daring to approach further. I wanted to say I'm sorry," she began, voice trembling. "I know that probably means nothing now, but I am. I never meant to hurt you like this." I stared at her. This woman I had loved, and who had destroyed our life. In that moment, I felt surprisingly little. I was drained of anger, drained of sadness, just drained. You didn't just hurt me, Rebecca. You betrayed me. You blew up our marriage, I replied, my tone flat. And for what? Some fling that's already lost its luster? I couldn't help the edge in that last part as I nodded toward where Brandon had gone. She flushed and glanced back at the house. From inside, I heard faint arguing. Brandon and someone else. Maybe one of the moving guys. She looked back at me with tears in her eyes. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she whispered. I was unhappy and I thought I needed a change. Something for myself. But I handled everything terribly. And now, I've lost almost everything. I said nothing, stone-faced. In the silence, she stepped down off the porch and walked hesitantly toward me. She stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could see the streaks of mascara under her eyes. They all hate me now, she continued bitterly. My parents barely speak to me. Our friends, well, they're your friends now. I'm basically persona non grata. And Brandon, she trailed off, looking back toward the house with a hollow laugh. Let's just say reality hit hard once money became tight and the honeymoon phase ended. He's not exactly Prince Charming. I gave a short, humorless laugh. It felt like the first time I'd laughed in ages. You're surprised? What did you expect from a freeloader who shackled himself to a married woman? That he'd turn into a devoted partner once he had you? My words were harsh, but I didn't restrain them. She opened this door. I wasn't going to coddle her. She winced. I deserve that. I deserve every awful thing, I guess. A tear rolled down her cheek. I miss you, Dan. God, I was such a fool. Her voice cracked. You were good to me. Our life was good, and I threw it away. I understand why you won't forgive me. I just needed to tell you I know I ruined it. And I'm so sorry. I felt a knot in my stomach. Pity. Not love or temptation. Just pity for this broken person in front of me. But I remembered Gloria's warning. Don't fall for any act. Was this genuine remorse or just regret for consequences? Likely a mix of both. I hardened my expression. I appreciate the apology, I said quietly. For what it's worth, I do hope you figure your life out, Rebecca. But that life won't involve me. That door is closed. She began to silently sob, shoulders shaking. Is it really completely over? After the 90 days, it's final. But is there any part of you that would want to try again? It took a lot for her to ask that. I could tell. Once that plea might have tugged at my heartstrings. Once I might have rushed forward to comfort her. Now, I felt only the mild sorrow you might feel for a stranger who made a mess of things. No, I answered firmly. There's no going back. Too much has been broken. I pulled my car keys from my pocket, indicating I was done. Take care of yourself. She reached out as if to touch my arm, but thought better of it. You too, she whispered. You look good, by the way. Healthier. I heard you started your own company. I'm proud of you. I didn't need or want her pride, but I simply said, yes, I'm doing well. I opened my car door. Goodbye, Rebecca. As I slid into the driver's seat, I saw Brandon emerge on the porch, scowling and saying something to her. She wiped her eyes and turned away from me, back to the mess that was now her problem. I reversed out of the driveway and didn't look back. I realized my hands were steady on the wheel, my heart at ease. That chapter of my life was truly done, and I felt free. 3 months later, on a warm spring afternoon, I left the county courthouse with a fresh decree in hand. Divorce finalized. Legally, financially, emotionally, I was free. The terms we'd set stood. I kept 60% of our assets, including the healthy proceeds from the house sale. The minimal alimony I paid was a drop in the bucket and would cease in a few months. Rebecca had relocated to a small rental across town, I'd heard, and Brandon was no longer with her. Word through the grapevine, mostly via our neighbor Jamie and others, was that he bolted not long after the money dried up, leaving her to deal with bills and rent alone. She was reportedly looking for work now to support herself. It seems reality was a cruel teacher, but that wasn't my concern anymore. I, on the other hand, had never been doing better. My startup had taken off quicker than expected. With my full attention and newfound motivation, I landed a couple of substantial contracts. I moved operations into a small industrial space and hired 3 employees. I poured my pain into productivity, crafting success from the rubble of my personal life, and it felt damn good. It wasn't all work, though. About a month after my divorce was filed, I had reconnected with an old acquaintance, Natalie Green, at a tech conference. Natalie and I had attended the same university, and she was now an accomplished software developer. We'd chatted professionally at first. I was curious about some custom software for my sensor modules. But coffee meetings turned into dinner, and dinners turned into something more. She was 35, intelligent, witty, and had a warmth about her that I found healing. Importantly, she knew about my recent turmoil and showed me a kindness and understanding that felt like a balm to my soul. I took things slow, cautious about rebounding too quickly, but with Natalie it just felt natural. By the time my divorce was finalized, we were officially dating, and I found myself smiling for no reason in the middle of the day again. I hadn't realized how much Rebecca's betrayal had hollowed me out until someone came along and filled that void with genuine care. If someone had told me I'd find happiness so soon, I'd have laughed in disbelief. Yet here I was. One Friday at my new company's small office, I was reviewing resumes with my assistant. I'd hired Janice away from my old firm. She eagerly joined my venture. We were expanding, looking for both office staff and assembly technicians. Janice handed me an application that made me do a double take. There, under previous employment, was the name Rebecca Harris. My ex-wife had applied, through a generic online portal, likely not realizing the company was mine. She had a degree in marketing and apparently was now desperate enough to seek work anywhere, even under my nose. I stared at the paper. It felt like seeing a ghost, but instead of hurt, I felt a bit of dark amusement. How the tables had turned. Janice raised an eyebrow at me, having recognized the name too. "You want me to handle this one?" she asked slyly. I gave her a nod. "Go ahead. Schedule an interview, but, well, you know how to handle it." Janice winked. She set up a formal interview with our small hiring panel for the following week. When the day came, I deliberately chose not to sit in on the interviews. I watched discreetly from a conference room as candidates arrived. Sure enough, Rebecca walked in at her allotted time, dressed in a conservative suit, clutching a portfolio. For a second, a pang of memory hit me. How many times I'd seen her dress up for something. How I used to tell her she looked sharp. She appeared nervous, even a bit frail. I reminded myself, her choices led her here. Janice and 2 other staff conducted the interview. I couldn't hear the exchange, but I saw from Rebecca's body language that it wasn't going well. After about 15 minutes, I saw the handshake and her forced smile as she walked out. She didn't see me behind the glass. Janice came to me right after, shutting my door with a satisfied smirk. "That was cathartic," she said. "She's not getting the job, obviously." "Obviously," I agreed. "How did it go?" Well, she was clearly uncomfortable, tried to act like any other candidate, but when asked about her gap in employment, she stumbled, gave some vague answer about personal matters. We pressed on qualifications, and frankly, she's not up to speed. 7 years out of the workforce, no current skills. I almost felt sorry for her, but then I remembered what she did. Janice folded her arms. One interesting part, she saw my nameplate and realized I used to work for you. She asked, "Is Dan Harris affiliated with this company?" I just smiled and said our founder couldn't attend today, and moved on. The look on her face, I think she knew. I nodded quietly. It was enough. There was no need to rub salt in the wound by confronting her myself. Let her think what she would, but she would get a formal rejection notice like any other unqualified candidate. Just another door closed. Later that afternoon, as I prepared to head home, my office phone rang. It was the county social services office returning a call I'd made earlier. I answered, and a curt voice said, "This is in reference to case number 2816A, applicant Rebecca Harris. As we informed the applicant, she is ineligible for public assistance due to liquid assets from a recent settlement. We've closed the inquiry." It took me a moment to register. Weeks ago, Eileen had offhandedly mentioned that Rebecca might try to claim financial hardship to get welfare. But the irony was she'd gotten tens of thousands from the divorce. Just mismanaged it. I had anonymously tipped the office to verify her asset situation so she wouldn't cheat the system. It seems she tried and failed. I thanked the officer and hung up. It was petty, perhaps, but I wasn't about to let her play the victim for a handout after everything. Actions have consequences. As I left the office that day, I felt an unexpected lightness. The sun was dipping low, the sky painted in pink and orange hues. In the parking lot, I almost went to my old car, a trusty Toyota I'd driven throughout the marriage. But then I remembered. I didn't drive that anymore. Parked in my designated spot was a shiny black Mustang GT, a car I'd dreamed of owning and finally treated myself to once the settlement money hit my account. I chuckled at my momentary forgetfulness and walked over to the Mustang, its surface gleaming. Natalie was meeting me for dinner tonight, and I looked forward to an evening of laughter and easy companionship, things I'd forgotten how much I needed. As I slid into the driver's seat, I noticed the new license plate I'd ordered had arrived, affixed to the front, EGBDF, a nod to my old mantra that had seen me through the darkest time of my life. Every good boy does fine. I smirked, thinking how I'd lived by that saying, only to be blindsided. But ultimately, maybe it was true. I had tried to live a good life, and now I was finally doing fine. More than fine. I revved the engine, the Mustang roaring to life. Before pulling out, I took a moment to reflect. Revenge was never about dramatic showdowns or gratuitous cruelty. It was about balance, ensuring that those who wronged me were left with exactly what they'd chosen, each other's empty promises and the fallout of their actions. Meanwhile, I claimed what was rightfully mine and built something better from it. In the end, I didn't need to destroy Rebecca's life. She had done a thorough job of that herself. I simply refused to rescue her from the ruins. I drove off, leaving the office park behind, leaving the past in the rearview mirror. As the wind rushed through the open window and a classic rock song blared from the radio, I allowed myself a genuine smile. The road ahead was clear, and every good man deserves to drive on. My life was truly my own again, and I was ready to live it with no regrets.